Okay guys, this is my explanation of the solutions from yesterday's 821 and 822 concept check. That was a Google form. We had enough incorrect answers that I wanted to make sure that you know how to do all of this stuff. So number one just asks you to solve this one right here. And you could use the quadratic formula, but there's not an x squared and an x. So I would just say subtract 9 from both sides, and then take the square root of both sides, remembering that when you take the square root of something squared, this answer over here is going to be plus or minus, okay? So we're going to get x equals plus or minus. We know that the square root of 9 is 3, and what's new in this chapter is the square root of a negative number is I, or an imaginary number. So the correct solution there was plus or minus 3i. The way it was written, I think, as an answer choice was negative 3i and 3i. Okay, those things mean the same. That was the right answer choice. In number 2, it also asked you to solve a quadratic, and this is set up really so that you could do complete the square, or you can add 25 to the other side, set it equal to 0, and use the quadratic formula. Okay, now everything from here on out really is going to be using open notes, so you might as well have the quadratic formula written down and know how to use it. Okay, so the quadratic formula: negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so in this case, a is 1, b is negative 8, and c is 25. So if you like the song, quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, yes, I know I'm not a good singer, but 4 times 1 times 25 is 100. Negative 8 squared is a positive 64. So this is 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 36 all over 2. Okay, running out of space, I'm going to put my next answers up here. So 8 plus or minus, and again, we know the square root of 36 is 6. We now know the square root of negative is an I. Anytime we have an imaginary number, we cannot leave it in this form. We separate it into what's called standard form. Okay, standard form is just a plus bi. So all we're doing really is taking this 2 and distributing it. And remember, because it's on the bottom, it's like distributing a 1/2, or saying 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 6i divided by 2 is 3i, and we leave the plus or minus right in the middle. And again, the way it was written on the computer as a choice was 4 plus 3i and 4 minus 3i, which was your correct solution. Okay, please notice every single time that you have one imaginary solution, you always have a pair. Imaginary solutions always come in pairs. A positive I with the exact same thing, but the negative I. So notice here, the 4 and the 4 are both positives. They could have been negative. It happened in this problem that they were both positives. The only thing that's different here between these two solutions, here and here, is that this is a plus 3i and that's a minus 3i. Okay, that's going to be important later on in the chapter. Question number 3 asked, why doesn't this equation have any x-intercepts? Okay, and if you've noticed, it's basically this equation over here from number 2. Why doesn't it have any x-intercepts? If you put this in your graphing calculator or in Desmos, you would see that, can you see that? I'm not sure. That the vertex is in the first quadrant, and you guys know just by looking with a positive orientation, it opens up. Okay, so that is a true statement. The vertex is in the first quadrant, and that parabola does open up. The roots are non-real. Now remember, non-real is just another way to say complex or imaginary. And we just solved this equation right here. We saw that it had imaginary solutions, so that is also true. Finally, discriminant is less than 0. Okay, well, the discriminant is simply the part of the quadratic formula that's inside the square root. So the discriminant is just this part that's inside the square root, b squared minus 4ac. So anytime the discriminant is less than 0 or a negative number, that means you a negative number inside the square root, it means that you're going to have non-real or imaginary solutions. It means your graph will never cross the x-axis, never have any x-intercepts. So your correct answer there was all of the above. Okay? And the very last question, another really important one. In the last week, I've shown you 3 different versions, all in the same video, of how to solve this. I'm going to show you the one that I think is the easiest. If you like to use one of the other ones, it's just fine. So if they're telling you 2 roots, and again, take notice, the real part is exactly the same. The only thing different is the imaginary sign. So really they're telling you that x is equal to -2 plus or minus 5i. And now we're going to work backwards and build the equation. So we're going to add the real part to both sides. Okay, I'm just flipping it over. If this would have been a +2, I would have subtracted. Okay, and then I'm going to square both sides. And the reason I'm squaring both sides, 2 parts. One is I want to write a quadratic equation. If there's 2 intercepts or roots, sorry, it won't have intercepts, 2 x solutions or roots, then it's going to be quadratic. The second reason is if I square an imaginary number, the imaginary number goes away and it becomes just a real number. So I have x plus 2, quantity squared, equals, now it doesn't matter if it's plus or minus, because when I square a positive, it's positive. When I square a negative, it's positive, so to speak, okay? But 5i times 5i is 25i squared, okay? And we now should know, anytime you see I squared, we can't leave it as I squared. It really represents -1. So this side is really 25 times -1, or -25. So I still have this x plus 2 squared equals -25, but I'm trying to write an equation here, so I want to move it to the other side. X plus 2 squared plus 25 equals 0, but really we want an equation that's equal to y. Now when you looked at your choices, all of your choices were in standard form, okay? So all you have to do is simply multiply this out, okay? Some of you can do that in your head. Some of you still like to use the generic rectangle. Either way is fine, okay? When you multiply that out, you're going to get x squared plus 4x plus 4, just for that part right there. Don't forget to add the 25. So the correct solution was y equals x squared plus 4x plus 29. Okay, that was your best choice. If you still have questions on that after watching this video, please email me or sign up for a Google Meet.